To live without risk, for me, would be tantamount to death. Jacqueline Cochran.
World War II was catastrophic to any and all people involved. Every 3 in 10 U.S. soldiers never made it back home to their families during this dreadful time, with some 75 million deaths worldwide. World War II still goes down as one of the most tragic and deadliest wars in history.
Almost 16 million United States civilians were drafted or volunteered into the war. Of this giant number, a very small percentage of our soldiers were women. It's safe to say that besides the physical gender barrier of our nation's people, both had the will and ambition to fight for our country, even though one was given significantly less opportunity. Jacqueline Cochran was born in Northwest Florida, roughly around 1906, as her birth date is undetermined.
Born with the legal name Bessie Lee Pittman by her foster parents, Jackie later legally changed it to Jacqueline Cochran in 1929. After the loss of her first son, she divorced her husband and moved to New York City, aspiring to start a new life for herself.
In 1932, Jackie's friend offered her a ride in her personal airplane. Intrigued by the experience, Jacqueline flew her first solo flight after only a few hours of training. She later went on to become a staple in aeronautics racing, even being the first woman to win the prestigious Bendix Trophy in 1938. However, during this era of positivity and new growth, Jackie did have one major concern. It was the beginning of the Nazi Revolt, a time that raised questions and fear across the nation. Keenly on her toes about the threat, Cochran approached the U.S. Army Corps to suggest utilizing women to ferry planes during wartime. Though she understood that this was against her rights as a woman, she still thought it was necessary to try. Despite her efforts, however, her ideas were shut down, as the officials did not see the need for her requests. Feeling the responsibility to use her talents for a purpose, Cochran moved to Great Britain and contributed to the ATA, Air Transport Auxiliary. While working in Britain, her main occupation was to recruit women pilots from the U.S. to work for the Royal Air Force.
For once, I've done something that I feel is a contribution to a cause that I'm in sympathy with Great Britain.
We interrupt this broadcast to bring you this important bulletin from the United Press. Flash, Washington. The White House announces Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor.
Pearl Harbor.
December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy.
The attack on Pearl Harbor had a huge impact on people around the globe. It especially affected the U.S. Army, as they did not realize how catastrophic this war was actually going to be. After discovering a lack of male pilots, General Marshall recruited Nancy Love, another well-known female pilot at the time. After hearing this, Jacqueline sent a complaint to the general, stating how he promised her this position when the time came, not Nancy.
As a result, Jacqueline was put director of the WFTD, Women's Flying Training Detachment, and Nancy in charge of the WAFS, Women's Auxiliary Ferry Squadron. These two programs, created to train women across the country, eventually merged into the WASP, Women's Air Force Service Pilots. Jackie was appointed the director with her official efficiency scoring of excellent. They also appointed Nancy Love as assistant director. Jackie was satisfied with this outcome because it was a big step in the women's rights movement. It also proved to the Air Force that women were capable of this responsibility.
Some important requirements to be accepted into the WASPs are the following. You must have American citizenship, must be between ages 21 and 35. You must have a high school education. You must have a CAA commercial certificate that is validated. You must have 500 certified hours of flight, and 50 of those hours in the last 12 months. You must hold a CAA 200 HP rating, and you must have 2 letters of recommendation outlining applicants' experience and qualifications from former employers or prominent people in the community who can be easily contacted. In contrast, it was not a requirement for men to have American citizenship. They could be any age between 18 and 35, and they were only required to have 65 certified hours of flight. Once accepted into the program, women across the country were driven to Sweetwater, Texas, where they would be intensely trained for the next 6 months. These women endured countless hours of physical training and mathematical studies,
preparing them for whatever lay ahead. Finally, when graduation came along, Jacqueline appointed each woman a set of wings, officially welcoming them into the program.
Not only did Jacqueline contribute to the war herself through her teaching, but she also gave the opportunity to hundreds of women along with her. Together, the WASP girls flew over 60 million miles, helping to ferry planes and complete duties like towing aerial targets, transporting cargo, smoke laying, and so much more. They flew every single type of aircraft available at the time, including Boeing B-17 and B-29 bombers.
They flew to 126 different U.S. bases around the country. All of this success and experience eventually led to make them equal to their male counterparts. Jacqueline felt extremely satisfied with the turnout of this program because it changed the views on women's rights. Unfortunately, throughout these hardships, 38 women involved in the program total died, 11 from training and 27 from missions. Countering the deaths, however, this program led to views changed on women in military status, and what Cochrane and Love hoped to be legal adoptions to.
These brave women transported 50% of U.S. cargo in World War II alone. The responsibility these brave girls had in their hands was like none other women had felt before, and they were sure grateful for it.
Then, disaster struck. As Cochrane and Love persistently urged for military status, Congress saw the inequality for salaries and other expenses and began to question why there was a need for female pilots at all. Ironically, the same House Committee of Military Affairs that argued for the program's creation would now, 2 years later, be arguing for its discontinuation.
After weeks spent finalizing, due to the high expenses and angry media, it was decided that the current class of the WASPs would be the last. After the final graduation on December 7, 1944, the Women's Air Force Service pilots were disbanded after only 2 years of their life. Though General Marshall promised its memory, the WASP would soon to almost be forgotten. With records sealed and hidden from the public, these ambitious young women went about their day-to-day lives once again.
It's September 2nd, 1945, and you hear on the radio that war is over. Full of rejoice and a lift of pressure, Jacqueline Cochrane is still left with a sense of regret. The dream she worked so hard to achieve never made it to the status she originally hoped for. In 1977, when the Air Force announced the first graduating class of female pilots, the media went crazy with excitement. With all the attention, Jacqueline and the WASP rose against it and claimed their place as the first female pilots.
Although getting hate from other organizations, on November 27, 1977, the WASP pilots officially gained the privilege to call themselves veterans. President Carter signed the law 95-202, which officially gave all members of the WASP veteran status, along with limited benefits. This gave them the rights to their accomplishments and the recognition they deserved.
Later, in 1979, they got their discharge certificates stating that they have fulfilled their obligations to the military, and in 1984 received World War II victory medals. Jacqueline was ecstatic with the recognition her program was gaining that she had worked so hard to create.
Cochrane later went on to break more records after the war, like being the first woman awarded the Distinguished Service Medal in 1941 and financially supporting the Lovelace's Clinic Women in Space program, which taught women how to go in space. She also owned her own cosmetics business. After being diagnosed with a heart disease on August 8, 1980, our favorite fly girl passed away. Jacqueline Cochrane broke the women's gender barrier in the U.S. military, providing women an opportunity to fight for their country during World War II. She exceeded the limitations of women's rights in the 1940s, opening doors to other women aspiring to involve themselves in the aviation field. In order to accomplish what she considered a responsibility, Cochrane worked with other military leaders to create the WASP, Women's Air Force Service Pilots.
The women involved in the program varied planes to other countries, as physical combat was not an availability at the time. Jacqueline had a huge impact on women's aeronautics and majorly contributed to the alteration of how women were viewed in the U.S. military.
Shout to praise the Lord, we're on a mighty mission.